Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Remarkably Me podcast. I am your host, Nika Apple. So excited that you would join in today for this incredible conversation. My guest today on the podcast is the Denitra Letrice, a sister of mine, fellow member of the Beyonding community. We consult together in the Asbury group, and she is a true soul sister, light worker, and precious child of God. And I am so excited that she would choose to share her story here. Dee is a coach and a consultant and also a motivational speaker. And I feel like I should say motivational speaker, like a motivational speaker, because you cannot help but be moved as she shares her stories. She's an incredible way of weaving the story together to help you see yourself and to walk away feeling changed, like knowing you were changed. Um, my experience with Dee is so much that I would say it feels like something is happening on the inside as I hear her speak to me, whether it is healing, whether it is creating transformation, whether it is being the catalyst for change that she is. Like the experience of her is so salient and memorable. And today on the episode, we talk about some really um, ah, incredible and miraculous healing experiences that have come throughout her life's journey. So Dee shares a lot about her childhood. We talk about parenting and what it's like to parent the children of today and how the experience even of raising children is a part of the healing journey. Dee shares a bit about some of the work that she does, and we talk a lot about the presence of God and the impact that God has had on her life and life lessons. You will leave feeling changed, inspired, encouraged. And I believe if you came for some healing, you will experience it today. So now I introduce you to my good friend and sister, the Denitra Letrice. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Remarkably Me podcast. I'm your host, Anika Apple, and it's my pleasure to have my sister in the house today, none other than Denitra Letrice, who I call Dee, known as Coach Dee. And oh my gosh, I cannot even tell you what the journey with Dee has been like. So Dee and I met through the Beyonding community. You hear me talk about it all the time. It's the safest place for transformation. And we definitely have gotten to witness and support each other through parts of our transformation there. But let me tell you about Dee. I heard her sharing her story on one of these sessions, and I tell you, she moved me to tears. And if you've ever had one of those experiences where you're listening innately on the edge of your chair, leaning in, because you're gonna want to lean in on this episode because that's who my sis is. I'm leaning there, and at the same time, I'm like, she's such an amazing storyteller. I'm enwrapped in the story, but the storyteller inside of me is like, this is my people. Like, she can tell a story. And she took us on this journey, and I can't tell you what it is because it may come up in the conversation, but I felt like a different person afterwards. She's telling her story, and I felt seen. She's telling her story, and things that I felt about myself were being validated, things that I saw in other people. She's telling her story, and I see people I love differently because I could connect them to some of the experiences and what their life was like and how they maybe showed up in my life in a certain way. Mm-hmm. So all I can say is buckle up and get ready for this conversation. I am so grateful that you're here. And it is my pleasure to introduce all of you who are watching and listening to none other than Denitra Letrice. Dee, would you like to do an introduction?
Wow, what a intro and welcome. Thank you so much. I always feel welcome in your presence, but it
It's an
feels
honor.
good to hear you verbally love on me. That makes me feel wonderful. So thank you for that.
I love you, love you, love you, and you know this. I do. I do. I
So, a
do.
bit of a bio. I am Denitra Letrice. I am a transformational coach, a motivational speaker, and I am also a culture consultant, helping companies cultivate the kind of culture that make people want to stay. Moreover, this year I celebrated 12 years sober from the addiction of alcohol. I am a
Amen.
mother, and moreover, I am living proof that God answers prayer.
Amen. And God does answer prayers. Like we have had so many moments where we're just having conversation with each other about things, and God just starts speaking and delivering confirmation, things that we had not articulated to each other. God's like, tell Dee this, tell Anika this. And we're experiencing that all the time. I want to, first of all, congratulations on your sobriety journey.
Thank you.
um, now that you said it, you opened the door. I can say that was a little part of the story that you shared with us
Mhm.
that day. Tell us about your journey. Tell us about what the experience was like and how you got to the decision that it was
Well,
time.
it's interesting. My relationship with alcohol started in my childhood because I was raised by a man who was addicted to alcohol and who unfortunately, when his disease was active, was very violent in our home.
Mm,
So my earliest memory is about 4 years old, and I'm woken up in the middle of the night because my bedroom door has been kicked open, and I see a silhouette of a man. And it's funny, in my mind, my child's mind, it looked like he was almost on fire. You know how a flame moves? Because I'm looking at his silhouette and the light around him makes it look like a flame to me. So it looked
mm,
like a man of fire had just walked into my bedroom.
my
And he
gosh.
announced to the family, who was now awake, my sister who was 6 and my mother in the next bedroom, that an angel of the Lord had talked to him and told him that I was the reason for everything that was going wrong in his life. And the only way that he was going to be able to put his life back on track was to crucify me. And here's the interesting thing, I have no doubt, sitting here as a 50-year-old woman, that there was a spirit that indeed told my father that while he was
Mhm.
intoxicated. And so the next thing that I remember was it was the next day, and we were arriving home, and life went on as normal. And I spent a lot of years, one, suppressing that memory. I didn't even recall that happened to me until I was 19 years old. And when it came to me at 19 and I mentioned it to my sister, and she said, "Oh, no, that's true. That's not a dream. You didn't make that up. That really happened to you."
Mhm.
I spent a lot of time being really angry with God about it because how could God allow that to happen?
Mhm.
In my own sober journey, which I'll get into in a minute, what I realized was we each have free will. So my father's activity that evening was his free will. God was all up in that space because it didn't make sense that my mother, who was 100 pounds lighter than my father, somehow managed to get 2 kids out of the house and past him. That there was a safe place, that when we knocked, a friend opened the door and we had a safe place to be. That the next day when I returned home, it wasn't still present in his mind. It never occurred again. So God was all up and in that,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
But I didn't know that.
Mhm.
It took me until the beginning of my own sober journey. And the interesting thing is, addiction, people always see the end of addiction and they go, how could people have gotten into that? That's not how addiction begins. Addiction is you're going out and you're having a couple of drinks with friends and everyone's having a good time and you feel really relaxed. And then the next thing you know, maybe you're having a glass of wine after work and it's gone from 3 nights a week that you need to just unwind to now you're at 7.
Right. Right.
And when you're not thinking about drinking, you're making plans so you can drink because you're not really going to brunch for the waffles. You're going for the mimosas, right?
Mm.
And the whole time that I'm going through this process of slipping deeper and deeper into addiction, and again, it's so subtle that
Subtle, yeah.
I didn't even realize that I was doing it, that little by little you begin to change friends, and now all the people who are surrounding you drink heavily when that wasn't the case in the past when you were a light drinker. I was also battling with resisting the call that God had on my life
Okay, come on.
because I was still angry with him. Because where were you back there?
Yeah.
Where were you when my mother got terminally ill and died when I was 16 years old? Where were you? Now you want me to go do your work and work with your people? Well, I don't want to do that. So to quiet that call, I was drinking to manage it.
Mm-hmm.
I was drinking to quiet the voice that said, that might not be the right marriage for you. I was drinking to quiet the thing that said, you really shouldn't be focused on that corporate thing. I really need you over here helping people right now. And I'll never forget, Anika, I was a new mother. My baby was about 2 years old. Now, I should state this too. We look real good in photographs, this little family that I created.
Mm-hmm.
Big, tall husband, big, beautiful house, cute little baby.
Mm-hmm.
We looked like the American dream. As a matter of fact, I was a stay-at-home mom for 4 years, even though I didn't want to be. But the picture required a stay-at-home mother, so that's what I did.
Yep.
And I remember one night we're getting my daughter ready for bed, and we do the thing, right? He goes in, snuggles her, puts her in the crib. We sit down on the floor, we read her a story, snuggle her a little bit more, and walk out the door. And I walked into the hallway and just fell to my knees and started sobbing. And he said, what's wrong? And I said, this life we have created makes me feel like God hates me.
Mm.
And I couldn't articulate it any better than that, but I felt so empty. I felt so lost.
Alone.
Here I am sitting in the middle of this lie that I created because other people told me this was the recipe to happiness. I did the thing. I did the thing. You told me go to school, be good, get married. Wait, I should say it like this. Go find you a man, get married, buy a house, have kids, bake that at 350 degrees for the rest of your life, and you'll be fine. And that's what I did.
Okay.
And to mask the emptiness, I'm drinking when she goes down for naps. I'm drinking as I cook dinner. Me and him are having a little after dinner, after we put the baby down, wind down. And I'm still thinking to myself, literally calculating in my mind, how long do I have to keep doing this?
I know that feeling so well. So well.
Literally the thoughts in my mind of, okay, my mom left when I was 16. She transitioned when I was 16 years old. I can possibly stay until my daughter is 18, but I can't keep doing this, God, if this is what life feels like. I can't. And I'm the type of believer that I believe that he and I sat in heavenly places and agreed on my assignment before I arrived. And I was literally telling God, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to break my vow. I can't do this assignment. It's too much. And there was one evening where I'm sitting at home. My now ex-husband, at the time he was my husband, had taken our daughter up to see his parents. And I was sitting in the house alone drunk. And I was pissed. And I started talking to God out loud about how angry I was because I was as addicted to my rage as I was the alcohol. And I was like, God, how dare you, if you can imagine, how dare you? First, you have me in a household with that violent drunk man. And then as soon as he gets sober, my mother's diagnosed with cancer and dies. I'm in this marriage. You're all powerful. You could bless this marriage and make it right. And where are you? And I'll never forget, I heard his voice so audibly say to me, if your child was lost, what would you do to find her? And it was so clear, Anika, that I started answering out loud. And I said, well, if she's on earth, I'll find her. And his voice said, so what much more would I do to come get you?
Goosebumps ran through my whole body. And this is not the first time I've heard this, but every time you talk about this part, like I feel it, the resonance of how much God wanted you to know that God had you.
What I saw in my spirit was a little being of light, golden stardust, in a barren forest. The trees had no leaves, stripped down. It looked like a New England forest in the wintertime. And I saw that little light being there, and I saw it from up above. So he was telling me, I see you. You're not lost. You're not lost. You might not know where I am, but I got you. And from that moment, Anika, until the moment that I could say I had gone 24 hours without a drink, I knew each time I would go like 36 hours and then I needed to drink, I would know he's still coming to get me, because he told me he's coming to get me. He's coming to get me. He's coming to get me. The interesting thing was I took my last drink on February 19th, 2012. So my first full sober day is February 20th, 2012. It is also my daughter's, at that time, her 5th birthday. So not only did he come get me, this is, I could cry. I could cry. He is so sweet. He is so thoughtful. He is so kind that he would allow me to give my daughter the gift of a sober mother. Every single year for the last 12 years, she and I have been able to celebrate our birthdays together. And this year was her 17th birthday. She came home from school with flowers for me. Mm-hmm. She said, it's your day too, Mommy. I want to celebrate you. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about healing. That he could have taken he could have done it that day. But it wouldn't mean the same that now my daughter knows every day my mommy decides to remain the mommy that's intact, that's loving for me, that's protecting me, that's thinking about me.
Oh, Dee. It's incredible. One of the things that God has been imparting to me this year is that as we heal, we are healing our children.
Yes.
And what God has shown me, it's God's way, is that the healing. So if you imagine a strand of DNA, mm-hmm. and let's see the generation before us, our parents, and then our children. It's like when we are healing right here in the center, mm-hmm. the healing automatically goes to our children. It automatically changes and transforms for them. And it's like, it's there. So the state that they were born into, which had some of the brokenness that we experienced and what we experienced in the generations before, it now is no longer present. Their baseline is now different because we've healed. And for our parents, mm-hmm. there's an option. There's an opportunity. So if I heal something that my dad or my mom are also wrestling with, they get mm-hmm. to choose whether to accept that healing or not. That's what God has been showing me. Yes. So to think of what you did for Julia, like how you created that opportunity for her, the baseline for her. Like that is such a big thing too. I've changed what the trajectory of the legacy for my family looks like because I've made this decision, not just the quality of my own life. And that is, you're right, that is healing.
It's interesting when I say I was talking to God about it, and I said, God, you can do all things, so why not just make the alcoholism not like before it even got to that? You could have done this before my kid showed up. Why wait until she was present to show up? And he said, well, Joshua, to break the curse, you have to face the curse. And I was like, oh, that's right. You had told me I was a curse breaker.
Come
You
on.
did tell me that generational curses would stop with me and not continue past me. I get it now. I see. And you were with me like you were with Mo. I'm in now. I got it now. You know, not only that, but my daughter was at such an age where when I would go to meetings, and I had a great group of people in the meetings who would see a child there and make sure that the meeting remained child friendly. I know that's not always everyone's experience, but that was mine. And she would say to me, Mom, this is my first year, second year. Mom, do you need a meeting? Mom, have you prayed? And so she's giving me the principles of my sobriety program back to me. Can I tell you, even in my getting sober in that first year, so after about 72 hours, alcohol is out of your body, but it's not out of your mind.
Mm-hmm. The habit.
It's not only the habit, but what alcohol does to your brain function. You're not even functioning on all cylinders until a year later. So when you initially start in the sober program that I was in, they tell you don't make any severe changes in the first year because you're not quite in your right mind yet. Just chill. Focus on just getting sober. So there was one morning where I'm wrestling. Now I had 60 days sober at this point. I'm wrestling. So there's no alcohol in my body, but it's still up in here, right? And Julia walks, my daughter's name is Julia. She walks into the kitchen. I'm making scrambled eggs, sausage, and grits. It's Saturday morning. We're about to do our thing. And she peeks around the refrigerator and she goes, Mom, can I have an ice cream sandwich? And I said, no, you can't have an ice cream sandwich. I said, are you hungry? She said, yeah. I said, well, your body doesn't want an ice cream sandwich. Your body wants good food. And I'm making that. We'll have it in a minute. And she goes, okay, Mom. She walked back in the living room, started watching TV. And I go back. I'm like, what was she thinking? And God said, you too. I said, oh. He said, yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
I had to get your baby off the couch to show you. And yeah.
It is so salient because God does this all the time. Like I will be in the process of having the conversation with the kid, like, this is this and this and this and this. And then as I'm saying it, especially it seems to happen with my daughter all the time. Like as I'm in the midst of saying whatever it is, I'm like, dang it, that's just what I was just talking to God about in my prayer room. That's just what I saw myself do. And I'm so grateful that they're obedient and that we allowed them in to our story. I want to go back to that because you talked about her giving you the principles of the program back.
Yes.
And I wanted to honor, like, even hearing you say that was so salient. It's like, because you allowed her to be there and in your truth, we come from generations where so much of truth was shielded from us. Even as you shared your story, it's like, and then we go back to business as usual. It's like, did that really happen? I don't know, because there's not a processing of the things. What I love about what I see shifting in parenting in our generation is this desire for transparency and trusting that God is strong enough to help the child understand it at whatever level they can, so that
Mhm.
it can be a part of their healing and experience. Like, I know my kids have said to me over and over again how much they appreciate my telling them the parts of my story that have felt very tender and vulnerable to share, because
Mm.
it helps them see me as a true and whole person. Talk a
Yes.
little bit about that in the relationship, and how that has helped in the relationship that you have with your daughter.
Well, it's interesting. I know that there are some people who grew up in traumatic and violent childhood situations like I did, or chaos situations like you experienced, where there's repeated trauma over a period of time. And we're faced with raising children, and the fear in the background, whether we articulate it or not, is, am I going to do this right? Am I able to be a good parent? Am I going to mess these kids up because of I didn't have what I needed, and I want to stop right there. Be what you needed.
Be what you needed. Come on.
Be what you needed.
Come on.
I was telling a friend the other day, we used to put my daughter in timeout because I made the decision that I wasn't going to spank. And I made that decision before I even knew I was pregnant, because I decided I didn't want to, in trying to figure out why my mother would stay with a man who beat her up. I didn't want my daughter to be raised in an environment where people say, I love you, and hit you.
Yeah.
So we made the decision we were going to use timeout. And we would give her 1 minute of timeout, which, to a 2-year-old is their whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And we put her in her bedroom, and she had to be there away from us and away from her favorite blankie. And it was for a minute, and she would be like hysterical. The world is ending. And at the end of a minute, we'd come into the room and she would go, please help me calm down. Please help me calm down. And so we would teach her ways. Even in this, we just going by the research and what they taught her. What they taught us in the books. We were teaching her ways to self-control, to self-modulate her feelings. And then at the end, I would say to her, how do you feel right now? Let's put words to it. Are you angry with mommy and daddy? Are you sad? Not honestly, because I was really that concerned about whether or not my 2-year-old was angry with me for the next 30 seconds, but I wanted to give this baby language for what she was experiencing, because that's something I was robbed of. So it goes right back to the original point. Be who you needed. I am now the mom, my daughter's 17. In the friend group, all the kids have my cell phone number. They text me directly. Hey, Mama D, this is what I'm going through. And one young lady said to me the other night, parents aren't like you are. The way you sit and talk to her, the way that you tell her things, the way that you give her room to feel her feel, parents aren't like that.
Yeah.
So I'm here to say, I think we're even sometimes better equipped to be parents, because we're not going to co-pilot this thing. We're not just going to autopilot our way through parenthood. We are engaged and we are sensitive because we know the cost of just setting the timer and walking away.
You got that right. And
Mm-hmm.
it's and I don't find it strange. I was talking to one of our sisters the other day, who shared both of her children said the very same thing, that we listen to our friends and talk about their families and their experiences, and it's so different. And my son, I shared with her, said my son said the same thing to me about a week ago,
Mm-hmm.
that just didn't he was like, he said, I just want you to know that I am blessed to have you as a mom. And of course, it feels good, but when he could articulate why and
Yes.
share some of the differences of what other people in his circle are going through, what their experience is like, and how it drives conversations away. And sometimes, I mean, some of these conversations they want to have, you're like, I want to have this conversation, but
Ooh,
it's
yeah.
like, but come on in and sit down and let's talk about it, because I'd rather you talk about it with me than anyone else. My daughter and I last night, were talking about something that happened at school, and I said, "Go get your Bible," and she was like, And by the time we finished the conversation, she was propped up. And she read the scriptures and she referred back to the things that we've been talking about this year that God has been saying to her. And she knows, as you know, she knows who she is. She knows that she's connected, that she knows that she has God's gift operating on the inside of her.
Hmm.
Um, they're incredible. And I
Yeah.
think that your story is such a beautiful example of how you can take the trauma and turn it around to be something so incredible. And I know in our sisterhood,
Hmm.
just the joy that you have in watching her become who she is. And her daughter is fierce, but I mean, you wouldn't expect anything else because now you've had some of the experience of what I talked about in the beginning about who Dee is.
Can I tell you another thing that I think is so
Yes.
merciful and wonderful about God?
Yes.
While I cannot, because my mother is now transitioned and is with him again, I can't go back and make amends with her. We can't fix that. We can't do anything differently in our mother daughter relationship. But the amount of healing that comes from being in this mother daughter relationship is amazing, right? So when she is in full ownership of herself and she's leaving for school and you can see it, her back is straight, her shoulders are back, she's ready to face the world in the morning. I get to heal that little girl that was afraid of what I was going to come home to. And if I had made my bed just right, if anyone was going to be angry with me, I'm like, wow. So that's what happens to a child who is given what they need from the beginning. And then there are other ways in which she speaks into my life.
Come on.
We,
Come on.
we were on vacation in Belize, and I was really excited because as a single mother, I was able to take my baby to Belize, right? And we get to the resort, and we're on one side of the resort near the cove, and you cross a single lane road, and then you're at the beach. So it's about the third day we're there. We're coming back from the beach. We're waiting to cross the road, and she said, "Mom, next year when we come, I want to be on the beach side so I can just come in and take a shower." Now, to some people, that sounds like entitlement. Wait a minute. What I saw was she is so used to living in a world that she speaks a thing and it is so that I need to line up to what she's talking about. Okay, where you want to be when we come back?
100%. And I was as I was listening to you, what I heard was when we come back next year, not if, not at some point in the future. It's like this is good. We're supposed to be here. This is the experience I expect to have in my life. Thank you for making it possible. And let's go. Like, let's go. Let's get to plan. Oh, I love that. I love that. It's interesting, even as you say entitlement, there are so many words
Mhm.
that have become commonplace. And we have a language that has two and three meanings for the same word that had like
Absolutely.
and we have plenty of words. I forget about the total amount of words that are in the English language. We have a ton of words. But sometimes we pick the things with such negative connotations
Mhm.
and it becomes commonplace versus us really looking at what it is. Don't we desire to have children who can see a future for themselves? Don't we
Yes.
desire for them to be able to speak and know that they can create the kind of life that they want for themselves? Don't we want them to know who they are in God, right? Like I love who we are nurturing and the people that I see them becoming. It's incredible.
You're spot on. And here's what I got too the other day. It dropped in my spirit. How dare we tell our children that God says, "Ask and it shall be given unto you." And then when they ask, just because we don't have the belief, the faith, the self esteem to ask, when my baby says, "When we come next year," she didn't say, "Mommy, you have to pay for it."
Come on.
That was her and God making that discussion. She just let me in on it. She's bringing me along on her vision. Where else we going, baby?
And let me tell you how D is healing me right now, because AJ said something to me last night. My son, as you know, is 15, and he was talking about why he does what he does. So he has his business and all this stuff. And there have been several times he's like, because I'm doing this for my family. And I'm like, no, like you're not, like please don't, like do this for you because it's what you love. Like I got us.
Yeah.
God got us, because I ain't got this. God got us. And so we're good. But even as I was listening to you say that, I'm like, but that's what he was trying to tell me. Because I know the conversations that he has are with God. And I know what I've asked God for. And what he was talking about is something I've asked God for. And it just it pauses me in this moment. And I hope that the audience experiences this as well. What have you been asking for, expecting, that perhaps you are explaining away because you don't know the way that that thing is going to come to pass for you? You
Yeah.
don't know. Maybe that's how God plans to deliver this particular thing, is through what my son's heart, not that I ever asked, but what his heart desires to do for me. It's mind boggling, but that's God.
I,
His
I
ways are
think
not our ways.
I think there are times that I can point to in my life where I didn't have the measure of faith to believe a thing was true. I could hope that it was going to be true, but I
100%.
didn't have the faith.
Yep.
That in on little legs walks the Holy Spirit dressed as my daughter
Mm-hmm.
and declares a thing. And I'm like, oh, yeah. She said to me one day, she was just in the refrigerator getting water. She opens a refrigerator and says, Mom, you know what I realized? And I was like, what, babe? She was like, you're the only one in your friend group, immediate friend group, that only has one house, and walked out the room. Now I'm like, God, I want another house. I wouldn't have thought to ask for it for myself.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
It's amazing to me who I am becoming because of how I see myself through her eyes.
100%. 100%. And similarly, I watch both of my kids, but it's so evident in what AJ is doing in his business. He gets so clear about what the outcome is going to be. Like last year, he built a vision board, and he said to me, he's like, we're in the halfway mark of the year, and 3/4 of my vision board is already passed. And I was like, and I'm one for affirmations. I don't do the whole resolution thing, but I absolutely will set vision for things. What I
Mhm.
realized is, I was like, this is not big enough. Like the stuff on his vision board, they're like, he's looking at a whole football field. He creates these visions that are so clear about what it is that he wants to do, and he knows he's going to do it. He said something to me at the very beginning of the year, and he's like, I need to go see this thing because this is important, and here's how it lines up to my vision. But we were coming to the end of January. He's like, I need to do this by the end of the month. And I was like, okay, we're at the last week of January. I mean, there's a couple days left. And he's like, Mom, I told you I need to go do this thing. And I said, but like what it is. And he said, I need to touch it
Mhm.
because I believe if I touch it, I can have it. And
Yeah.
so I'm gonna tell you what it is. We went to a car dealership, because he has his permit, and he'll get his license later on this year. And there's a specific car that he wants to purchase for himself.
Mhm.
And we go in, we go out, we test drive the car, the whole 9 yards and everything. And we're getting ready. We're just the salesperson's lovely. We're talking to them, and we're about to leave. And he's like, we can't leave yet. And I said, what do you mean? He said, I need to understand the numbers. And I'm like, what? He said, I want to sit with the finance person. This is what he said. I want to sit with the finance person and understand exactly what it takes for me to obtain this, because I need that. And I was like, okay. And we did exactly that.
Mhm.
And I'm in the car on the way home, he's calculating, asking questions. How much is insurance? How much is this? How much is that? Or whatever. And all I can tell you is in the very next month in his business,
Yes.
he beat the goal that he had set for himself. Like this is something that's so big. Yeah.
Can I tell you, right? So I have been doing more in 24 with Eric Thomas, Dr. Eric Thomas, motivational speaker. And
Mm-hmm.
he gave us an assignment one day as he was speaking. He said, I want you to get out a piece of paper. I want you to write, God, I need, and then fill in the blank. What do you need in the next 30 days? And I remember doing it because I remember I had the let me tell you something attitude about it. And the first thing I put is I need to have my blood pressure under control fully, consistently in the next 30 days. And then he said, write two more. And the next one was, I need to make $50,000 in new engagements in this month. And I remember as I wrote it, I thought, is 50,000 possible? Is that the right amount? Is that really what? So the energy of that's what I need to, is that too much?
Mm-hmm.
I went back and checked 30 days later, my blood pressure green across the board when I take it every single morning consistently. But I brought in 19,000. And so I started writing God a letter. God, I realized the reason why I got 19,000 is because I had 19,000 worth of faith.
Faith. Yep. Yep.
What can I do to grow my faith to match what you're prepared to do in my life?
Say it again. Say it again.
What can I do to grow my faith so I'm prepared to receive what God has in mind for my life?
I hope
Because
everybody caught that.
it's bigger than we don't have because we don't ask. We don't have because we don't believe. God's like, I'm trying to give you houses that you didn't build. And we're like, ooh, I wonder if God's going to let me get a decent rent break on this condo. He's like, I got all this stuff laid up for you.
Yep. With your name on it. With your name on it. That no one else can have because it is for you should you decide that you can believe deeply enough. That you believe it. How bridge the gap for them, D? How do you get from the place where you're like, well, I wonder, because we know that's rooted in something, that there's a wound under there, right? So how do we get to that wound and then begin to heal it so that we can believe?
So my wound was because I was born a dreamer and a visionary to two fear-based people. Right?
The words.
And that sounds like a disadvantage, but it was actually designed to be an advantage for me. Because God says, I want you to know that even if the whole world says no, me and you say yes means yes. 330 million people in the United States, if they all say no and me and God say yes, we're the majority.
Come on.
But I would write out these Christmas lists, right? Back in my day, I'm old enough to say that for real, y'all. Back in my day, you would get a Sears catalog or a JCPenney catalog in the mail about October, November, and I would start writing out my list for Santa, which included the page numbers, the model number, and this thing would be like 25 pages long. It included one year a 7-piece set of leather luggage just in case anyone invited me to go to Europe. That was literally the mentality that I had. To two people who are under the stress of trying to feed us and keep us clothed and keep us homed, who was, in my father's case, forced to leave school to work on my grandfather's sharecropper farm in the 4th grade. So 9 years old is when he was forced to leave school. And here comes this kid calling impossible possible. And because I don't have a relationship with God, I think she wants me to do it. And so there was anger around it. Why What he would say is, why are you never satisfied? What he felt was, why are you asking for what I can't give?
Yeah. Yep. The reframe right there. I hope y'all caught the reframing.
So now I had to go back to that little girl with her Christmas list that she threw away that year and pretended that I'll just be happy with whatever shows up in my life. And that's where so many of us are, Anika. We
Oh,
get confused or we are miseducated by people who say they come in the name of Christ, that you should just be grateful for whatever shows up. My therapist gave me an amazing analogy to this, right? She said, Dee, you keep coming to God like you were Oliver Twist in that movie. And you're scared and you're walking up real slow and you got the bowl out and you're like, please, sir, can I have a little more?
Mm-hmm.
She said, Dee, do you realize that you are the seed that he planted?
Shoot.
That you are the tree?
Mm-hmm.
That the fruit that you produce is supposed to feed others? She was like, of course he's going to water the tree. Of course he'll give nourishment to the soil of the tree because he's got other people that need to eat off the fruit of what you produce. You think it's too small, D, it's bigger than you.
Facts. All facts.
And I was like, oh, she said, don't you have a lawn guy? Yeah, his family needs you. That's fruit. And she started going through my life to show me. And she said, how many other people are waiting for you to fully bloom and be in fruit so they can be blessed?
100%.
Oh, well, now I need to go back to I write my prayers to God. I need it by this time because me and the people you intend for me to bless need X, Y, and Z.
That's so good. That is so good.
We got to stop with this Oliver Twist thing. I know we do it. I know we do it. There was a lot of people in those churches with me when I was little. So dozens of people that I at least know. I remember there was one time in my life too, Anika, where I was a young person, early 20s. I'm in church. I'm trying to worship. And I'm also worried because I'm on unemployment at the time. And I got to call the light company on Monday and make some kind of arrangement so they don't shut my lights off in the winter. And it hit me full on. And I was there. You are the great. I was really trying to worship. And I said, you can't tell me that what God had in mind for me was for me to be worried about my light bill when I should be spending time with him. As if he ain't got enough to cover my light bill.
As if he doesn't have access or does not consider and know every detail about you enough to know, oh, I know when it's due and exactly what is required.
As if he isn't, and it's funny, he reminds us he takes care of the sparrows.
That's right.
He dresses the lilies.
Exactly.
So
what he considered for us.
Be worried and anxious for nothing is actually a commandment.
Yeah, indeed.
I also needed to go back, Anika, as we're talking about this, when we talk about what it's going to take to build my faith. I had to get really clear about something. As children, our first representation of God is our parents.
Facts. Absolutely.
And so if you are experiencing a father who is in lack, you're going to need to unravel that thing. If you have a father who is not generous, you're going to need to unravel that thing. If he's not merciful, you're going to need to unravel that thing. If he wasn't present, you're going to need to unravel that thing.
Yep.
To talk about the father big F versus the father small F.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we do that work. And I think we pray and we mean it with our whole hearts earnestly. But we don't understand that subconsciously we're canceling what we're consciously thinking, because in the back of my mind, I'm saying, Father doesn't show up. Father is not merciful. Father is not kind. So I had to dig in the word and find out what it said that he actually was. And it said, God is love.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what I know of love is he don't want my blood pressure going up, worried about how I'm going to pay bills. He doesn't want me losing sleep at night, worried about how I'm going to make ends meet. That's not love. So that's
Right.
not God.
Exactly. Exactly right. And I love when you said like this piece about just being happy with whatever shows up in our lives. That speaks to me so deeply. And when I think about some of the examples that I've seen in my own family, as a matter of fact, my mom and I were having a conversation today around people pleasing and things. Both of us like so glad that that chapter has closed
Yes.
and that we continue to heal through it. But there is so much of that learned behavior of like, well, people putting their own desires on us. And I wrote something earlier today. I know it will turn into a reel or a post or something, but it was like this the quickest way um, to resentment is to take care of everybody else before you take care of yourself.
Yes.
That doesn't mean being selfish. It has nothing to do with that kind of attitude at all. But it's a recognition that it does matter what's coming into our life. We don't have to be satisfied with something that's beneath what our requirements are.
Yes.
And in the same way, we also don't have to pour out everything that we have to give onto others. What I have seen, and I feel like you and I have talked about this before as well, that this kind of pulling ourselves away to reframe how we care for ourselves to make sure that we're pouring into ourselves first is required in order for what God has called us to. We know we're called to help provide and create pathways to fruit for other people, to help them on their path to purpose, to help them stand in the truth of who they are, to help them see themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we had to do all that for ourselves first. We had to see us first. And we couldn't do that if we were spending our life taking care of everybody else and then giving ourselves what was left over.
I remember very clearly being 15 years old, sitting on the side of my mother's hospital bed, probably 2 weeks before she passed away.
Mm.
And she was sleeping because she was heavily medicated. And I was just looking at her skin. You know how you, in those moments, try to absorb the person that you know will be leaving soon.
Yep.
And I remember as clear as day, 35 years later, the thought that I had, I wonder what she could have been if it wasn't for us.
Mm.
Is that the legacy we're going to leave our loved ones? That they stand at our bedsides as we transition and think, I wonder what they could have been? There was so much more. So even at 15, I could see so much more in her, that she was taught that she was supposed to pour herself out. Anything she wanted to do, anything she aspired to do. She had been a great gospel singer. She stopped singing and touring when she got married to my father, because wives don't spend time away from their husbands. She could have had a Grammy. I don't know. I don't know. Right? But I
Right.
wonder what she could have been. And now, moreover, asking yourself, do you want to be laying there in your last moments, surrounded by your loved ones, thinking that one thing I could have done? I wonder what would have happened if I had poured all of me into that thing. I'm trying to leave with no regrets and completely empty.
Completely empty, not having missed a thing. It's part of my prayer every morning. I don't want to miss not one thing that you have set out for me to deliver, to do, to birth, to build. I don't want to miss a single thing. I don't want to take the $1 million ideas with me to the other side. I want them to be here. I want them to be built as monuments to your glory and your goodness so that they can be transformational for your children as they experience you, as they experience your plan for them.
Imagine this. Imagine you're a little kid and you've been invited to a birthday party. You remember that feeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
You get really excited. You anticipate what snacks they're going to have, what activities are going to be there, and they dress you up real cute so you're feeling good about yourself. And
Yep.
your parents give you the present, and it's generally the present that you wanted. You value it a ton. They wrap it up real pretty, and you can't wait for your friend to see it. And you go to the party. Now, imagine you go to the party and you gave this friend of yours your favorite book in the whole wide world. Well, the first gift they open is a new, I'm going to date myself, I'm going to say Nintendo. This would be the modern PlayStation. Right? And so now this book that you were excited about, maybe you got it down here. Oh.
Mm-hmm.
And the next gift is a new bicycle.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. And now, after watching all the other gifts you make up in your mind, that comparing your gift to all the gifts that are out there, you're ashamed of it. It's not as good as all the other gifts. So you know what? You're just going to tuck it behind your back and you're going to leave with it. And now you have to go back to your parents and explain to them that you never gave the gift. You never unwrapped the gift. The gift will not be used because you decided that the gift they gave through you was not good enough. To me, that's what it would feel like returning to the Father with my stuff unwrapped.
Yeah.
Well, God, I didn't do the motivational thing because, there's a Tony Robbins out there and he's helping millions. So the thousands that you sent me to save, it just didn't compare. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
God said he would go get one and
One.
leave the 99.
99. Come on.
Tell me you're not going to use this gift to help whomever you can.
Come on.
I would never. Everybody thinks about transitioning, and there's some who think of a foundational hell where you would be rejected completely. I'm not worried about rejection. I'm worried about disappointment.
Come on. Yeah. And what's wild is that if you think about it, this is the difficulty with us not being able to see ourselves, right? Because I can see, as you're describing it, I'm like, oh, I can see Anika in that place. I can see her looking at the other gifts, the little Anika, and being like, yeah, oh, this book, it's just probably not going to be enough. But this Anika knows that, oh, I can look back and I can't tell you what the gifts were that I received when I was 7, 8, and 9. And I'm sure there were bikes and big wheels and whatever else. But you know what? At some point in my life, my mom gave me The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. She gave me the 4 Agreements. It's the books that have been handed to me that might be seemingly small in someone's mind that have transformed me into the person that God desired for me to be. So I love that you use the book as an example, because it's so easy for people to think maybe that was not good enough or special enough or what have you. But for the person receiving that from love, that it's something you love, that's something special that you desired, even if the person couldn't see the value in that moment, right? Even if we expand your example that the person's like, oh, this is great, and they tuck it away, you don't know that could become their very favorite thing. It could be the thing. There's something that Leilani had shared with me early on in my journey, my spiritual walk, and the role that she played. And it was a vision where I had written a book, and I had gone to my deathbed with this book having been written. I knew this book was going to change the world. I knew it. I was sure. And I went to my deathbed because it had not done a thing. Like, if anybody even read it. And what she saw, what she was talking about, is that book getting into the right child's hands, a young girl, and her reading it and her going on to change the world.
Yes.
And I bring that to say that sometimes the nuggets we don't know where they go. Even the things that you and I talk about today, we don't know where all of these beautiful pieces of your story and the shared experiences that we are laid out here, we don't know how they will hit and be carried with people, and who will take a moment of what you've said and share it with somebody else, and how it will be transformational for them. Perhaps someone now is thinking, oh, I was going to give this part of myself to the world, but I
Mhm.
decided I'm not Tony Robbins, and I'm not, I'm not Dee Latrice, I'm not Anika Apple. So I'm just gonna go ahead and let them podcast and coach and take on the stages and all that stuff. No, you go get yourself on the stage too.
Immediately.
Immediately. Because
Immediately.
you don't know the impact, in the same way that every single one of us has had to fight through those moments. And listen, we call each other, because I'd be like, D, so I think I need to take a leap. And D's like, you better leap, because there are people waiting for you. What did you tell me on the call last week? There are people waiting for you, right?
Waiting for you. Waiting for you. This is the interesting thing, right? I remember on my sober journey, reflecting back on what it felt like when I was literally detoxing from alcohol. And most people don't know this. Detoxing from alcohol is more dangerous than detoxing from any other drug. In fact, you're recommended not to do it by yourself. I didn't know that at the time because I wasn't studying my addiction. But that night I was having heart palpitations. To put it to you like this, many people think Amy Winehouse died of a drug overdose. She actually died trying to detox herself from alcohol.
Wow.
It was the
My God.
complications from that.
My God.
When I did get up that morning, I went to a treatment center and they sent me directly to the ER to medically detox. That's how severe it is, right? So I'm now sober, thinking about that experience where walking out of hell was literally taking my life. And I said to myself, God, I promise you, I vow to you that I will never keep my mouth closed about the fact that there is help, that there is a solution, that you don't have to stay in hell just because you don't know the way out. I'm going to tell as many people as you tell me to tell. And people who said to me initially, D, alcoholism is frowned upon. I don't think you should tell. I gave a lunch and learn about addiction at the company where I work and told 400 of my coworkers. I said, this is what alcoholism looks like, because I was functioning. I would show up at work every day. I got promoted 3 times in the depth of my addiction. So there might be some people that you're managing. There might be some people around you.
Sure.
Here's some of the telltale symptoms, and you can't tell them, but just know I have nothing to hide. I'm out. I'm out. And everybody can get out too, whether that is addiction, whether that is depression, whether that is isolation and loneliness. I didn't even realize that in my addiction, I was making up stories in my mind altered space. And some of those stories sounded like, there's no one I can depend on. I have nobody to call. It's all up to me. All of those are lies.
Yeah.
Every last one of them. I'm not lovable. My relationships never work out. Your relationships not work out because you are ill and you're attracting ill people, and 2 ill people in a relationship never gonna work.
Yeah. And because you've decided you're not worthy of the relationship you say you want. Yep.
When we get really clear, I would love anyone who's listening to go back to who you were. Spend just a few minutes visualizing. Who were you at 5?
Yeah. Yeah.
What did you believe was possible at 5? I thought I could walk through the forest and find Smurf Village when I was 5. That's how much anything was possible for 5-year-old me. Can you feel that feeling in your body of what it feels like, that anything is possible and magic really happens in the world? Now fast forward and bring that back with you. Just bring the feeling back, not the belief, but the feeling. And start talking to God honestly about what you want. The other thing is, Anika, some people have told themselves to bury and suppress what they want for so long, they might be our age and not even know, honestly.
Yep. Or they're afraid to even bring it up. I definitely experienced that in my journey back in 2020. Like when my best friend said, what gives you joy? And I was like, I don't know. And then I was like, how could I not know? And it's funny, it's like, it's so easy for me to answer that now. This moment gives me joy. I'm
Yes.
talking to you, I'm listening, you are pouring into me, pouring into all of us. I know people are going to experience healing as they listen to your voice, as they receive the gifts that you are giving to them.
Yes.
Like, this is what brings me joy. Serving God is what brings me joy. Helping people see themselves is what brings me joy. Like, yeah.
I would even say, touching on what you just said, sometimes it feels overwhelming. What's my call? What am I supposed to be doing? How do I serve God? Be yourself is step one.
Yeah.
Stop sending your representative
Come on. I was waiting for it. Tell them about it, D. Tell them about the representative.
when God has sent you. And you know your representative. That's the person you put on when the music goes off in the car and you get out and you're in the work parking lot. That person, right? We call it code switching. It's so much bigger than code switching, right? It is you have fragmented yourself into multiple compartments. And it's not always just for the people at work who don't look like you. You may have done it for your parents, right? You may be doing it for your partner. I was actually instructed when I was married, I was told that my job as a wife was whatever my husband liked, that's what I like. And yes, I know it looks like Coming to America with whatever music you like is what I like. That is what my father instructed me to do. If he likes baseball, you better like baseball. So there I am, eyes dry, because that's how bored I was, trying to understand what was the big thing about baseball. And what I thought, Anika, was I'm going to do this, send my representative to fill him up. And in turn, he's going to do the same. So now he's going to take me to see the color purple, and we're going to get all into Celia and Mister, because I just sat through 13 innings of the Yankees versus the Red Sox in Yankee Stadium on a hot day. Let me tell you what didn't happen. He didn't take me to see the color purple because he thought the representative was me. So he's giving currency back to the representative, and me is shriveling and dying. And that's not his fault.
Yeah.
When you say them folks at work treat me like such and such and such, do they know you?
Yeah.
Have they met you at all? You.
Yeah. Because you are showing up for yourself in that way. We think that we're showing up for the other people, but it really is what we've decided is going to be acceptable for them. So therefore, we have lost touch with what it feels like to be a whole person.
Moreover, what we're saying is who we innately are is not enough.
Yeah. Yes. That part. That part.
Who I am is not acceptable. Who I am is unlovable. So I'm going to craft this hocus pocus to create something that I believe you want to see. And it even feels yucky to think about doing that. It feels deceitful to you first. To you first. You can't come out of a childhood that was neglectful and abusive and then grow up and you now become neglectful and abusive to you. That's not fair.
It's not fair. It's not. And it doesn't have to be that way. We don't
It does
have
not.
to choose that.
It does not have to be that way. I had to go find little D, that 4-year-old whose father was trying to kill her, and sit her in my lap and say, I hear you. We're going to do the stuff you wanted to do. I got you now. Me and God going to make it happen. Matter of fact, he sent me to come get you.
To come, that part, to come retrieve you and help you heal. You are safe now.
You are safe now.
Yeah.
You are safe now. You got to show up for that little one. You got to show up for little you.
Yeah. So good. You deserve it. You deserve to show up for little you. Your younger self, your inner child deserves you to show up for them. So
Absolutely.
beautiful.
Absolutely.
Oh, Dee, it is so good. Okay, so 2 things before we wrap.
Yes.
I would love for you to just take a minute and tell our audience a bit about what you do and how they can connect with you. Of course, we'll put all of your details in the show notes, but just share a little bit. And then I got a remarkable question for you before we go. So go ahead.
Absolutely. Of course you do. So I am a transformational coach. I work both in group coaching sessions and also one-on-one clients. We'll remove you from your goal to what resistance you have in your area and what obstacles. We make a path to move you forward and move those right out of the way. I also am a keynote speaker and motivational speaker. I really just show up, get out of the way, and let God speak what he needs to his people. And on a corporate perspective, I do culture cultivation training for corporations. So your leadership want to provide a better culture. I come in and I help with a game plan on how to get that done. I'll let you give all of the details on my website, Instagram, but I am in all the places and all the things. Feel free to reach out to me directly.
Awesome. And clearly you can tell how amazing Dee is at this work. It is purpose work. And she literally does what she says. She shows up and moves herself out of the way, and God pours through. And there is just it always is an experience, just like what you have all experienced today. So Dee, before we go, you know that our Remarkably Me podcast is all about how we heal through the power of stories. And I thank you again for sharing your story today to help others heal. We want people to create remarkable lives. The life that you've been describing through this episode, where we really create the legacy that we look back and we're like, I lived this life. Like, I want people to be at end of life like, I lived this, I did this. Like, this is what I wanted to be able to gift to the world, because it was burning on the inside of me, because it was connected to purpose. And so they look back and they are like the moment that you described earlier, where you were sitting at your mother's bedside, where their family and friends are not looking at them like, but what could have been? But instead, they're just so grateful that they got a chance to witness you living the life that you lived. So what couple, maybe 2 or 3 recommendations do you have for how people can create and live their remarkable life, not as their representative, but as their true, authentic, and sovereign self?
So I'm actually going to ask that they take one question into account. Just one. What if? Begin to journal under the premise of what if. What if I could have every desire in the area of health and fitness? What would that look like? Give yourself permission to ask that question. What if you could have what you define as personal wealth? What would that look like? I think we have, not just because we don't ask. I think we have because we don't dream. So those are the 2 things. Ask yourself the question, what if? and then write down your answers. And I will caution you this: when I started this exercise, all of my inner critics would show up and go, "You can't ask for that. That's impossible. Don't turn the volume down. Tell them to shh, like you're in a
Mhm.
movie theater. Write fearlessly what life would look like if resources, time, money was no option." Start there. And when you start having that kind of discussion, and now you display to God what is really in your heart to have, the desires that He put in there in the first place,
Come on.
I promise you, 60 to 90 days, you're going to start to see things like I did with the blood pressure. Oh, I wrote that 30 days ago, God. I wasn't even thinking about that. You did that? Give them something to work with. Write it down. Write it down.
Yeah, because God is waiting for it. God tells me all the time, they just don't believe.
Yeah,
Miracles are ready, but they just don't believe. And we will have at the level of the faith with which we believe. That is just what it is.
absolutely.
Whew, Dee, you have blessed us so, so, so much. And I am so grateful that you would come and share your story. Um, but I'm swelling with this. I don't know what the right word is. I've moved away from the word of saying like proud because it just has a connotation that's just, but like I'm godly proud of you. And it
Mhm.
is such an honor to witness your continued growth and pouring out to people and the wisdom every time I am with you. I feel like I am sitting with a sage,
Mhm.
who is just so genuinely open to spirit for pouring through. You don't even know, but you have said so many things that God has been speaking to me. And so I thank you too that while this was for everyone, I
Mhm.
thank you for the gifts that you have poured into me as well. So, such an honor to have you, my friends. And
Thank
we
you so
will
much.
see you
Such an
soon.
honor to be here. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And for all of our audience, we appreciate you listening to us today. We'll have all of these information in the show notes. And we'll see you next week on the next episode of the Remarkably Me podcast. As always, peace and blessings. Thanks everyone for joining us for the episode. I know, I told you you would be ever changed, that it would be such a great experience and a great conversation. Clearly, I enjoyed the conversation, and hopefully, you enjoyed it just as much. Dee is absolutely incredible. And there were so many great nuggets. I love the questions she posed to us as we frame up how we can make our lives the remarkable life that we desire to have and are purposed for us. Will we really ask the question, what if, and take it across our finances and experiences in our life to create that which we desire to live? Will we be bold enough to write it, to journal it, and I would say to read it again and again until we believe it, to visualize it, until we bring it to life? Her words are hanging with me after this podcast episode, and I hope that you feel inspired and encouraged to chart your own path. And listen, I would tell you that while you're doing your work, sometimes you need help. If you recall Dee talking about the journey through her sobriety journey, um, she talked about how difficult it is to navigate through alcoholism and detoxing from alcohol without support. And I wanted to just, I feel like I'd be remiss if I did not talk about the impact of the Healing Crusade. Part of why we exist is to help build community around healing. Like we all have different ways that we need to heal different parts of us, places where we want to start, places that are most impactful in terms of what the deep wounds are that we want to work through. And what we do in the crusade is create a space to touch on those areas in such a way that you can begin to explore what needs a depth of healing. And then through the exercises that we provide, You can go as deep as you want, as wide as you want, as narrowly focused as you want for where you are in your journey. So the goal is not to create a way that you heal just like everybody else, but to create the space for you to do your healing work while having community around you, knowing that you are not doing it by yourself, and being able to have resources and people to lean on to help guide you through your journey. I hope that if you've not taken a look at the Healing Crusade, that you will do so. We all have healing work to do, that is for sure. I'm actively healing as the leader of the Healing Crusade and make no bones about the fact that I am on a journey much like all of you. So I hope you'll take a look at the Healing Crusade. You can go to my website, anikaapple.com, and there's a tab for the Healing Crusade, and all the information is right there. We'll also link it in the show notes. But the support that you need is out there. The question is, will you say yes to yourself? Thanks for joining us for this episode, and I'll see you next week. As always, peace and blessings.